It is up to just 10 p.m. on Wednesday. Time for Sidebar Extended. My name is Larry Medowo. Let's take a minute to review the week.
Tumesema wale wote ambao walihusika na uwizi ya kura mpaka watoke. Tumesema watoke. Wasipotoka tutaenda kuwatoa.
We must give IEBC the space to run this election.
The Kenyan people will again affirm their choice of who they want to serve as their president.
Wewe Ruto, kama unashambulia Chebukati, ati unasema nakutana na NASA usiku, produce evidence.
Hii kitu hii ya siasa ya kiti ya urais utaomba na utapata.
If you miss 8 times in this session, you go home automatic. After they ensured that they're in the payroll, they have decided to forget about who elected them.
Welcome to the show. I am honored to have with me two of Kenya's finest legal minds, the CIS Senator James Orengo and the Senator for Tharaka Nithi, Professor Kithure Kindiki. Thank you both so much for coming in, gentlemen. Let's start with NASA's statement today. You're not going, and your members are not going to the National Assembly, to the Senate, and there will be no election on the 17th of October. Senator Orengo, what is your reasoning for this?
Our reasoning is that we cannot go for an election which is not going to be free and fair. And we're not going to an election if the IEBC is not in a state in which it can organize free and fair elections. And considering the judgment or the determination of the Supreme Court, it is clear that there are some people sitting in the commission who have committed acts of illegality and committed irregularities, issues that were before the court, and before those can be resolved, IEBC will not have the capacity to hold free and fair elections.
Senator Kindiki, some within NASA are upset that President Kenyatta went ahead to open Parliament yesterday and is moving ahead with business when NASA believes it's not properly set up.
The President, first and foremost, 30 days after the swearing in of members of Parliament, the President is obliged by law to address the House. I have looked carefully at the Constitution from the first page to the last. I have not seen anywhere where a situation like what happened yesterday is unlawful. What is covered in Article 134, which our friends in NASA are citing, does not include address to the Parliament. And you have seen the President was very modest. He even appreciated there is an oncoming election, refrained from talking about the Jubilee agenda for the next 5 years, which would have been ordinarily the case, and only said, let life continue. There's an election, but Parliament must operate. For heaven's sake, the judiciary is operating, let Parliament operate, let other institutions operate, county governments. The only issue is that the presidential election has to be repeated. That was the message, and you saw the President's speech was actually the shortest since 2013. Because he didn't want to spend time.
Partly the speech was short because he lacks self-confidence. He knows
that's not
he is
true.
not properly
that's
sitting
not
as an elected
that's
president.
That's not true. You know,
he's exercising the power of a president-elect who has what is called a temporary incumbency under Article 134 of the Constitution. And it is correct that he made a very short address. But this is in consideration of the fact that the tenure of the president comes into question on the, it came into question on the 8th of August when the president, together with the parliamentarians and senators, went for elections. And by the way, Constitution says that, the elections will be held together with other elections, that is the parliamentary and other elections. And therefore, the question of tenure is very important. He is acting on borrowed powers. And that's why even his residency at the State House is that of a squatter.
That is politics.
And until the elections are held on the 17th, if at all there's going to be an election, he cannot fully exercise the powers of the president. And finally, we have a constitution where there's a separation of powers. The three institutions of government do not need to meet at any one time until this matter is resolved through a general election.
Larry, with a lot of respect to my learned senior, James Orengo, whose understanding of the law, I have no doubt, is very deep. But unfortunately, tonight he's mixing politics and the law. Two things. One, on the issue of temporary incumbency. We are not dealing with a presidency, a president-elect. Why? Because of the Supreme Court, which overturned the will of Kenyans. We disagree with that, but we respect it. And therefore, the law is that there was no election. The election was voided, and therefore, if an act is voided or a process is voided, it's as if it never took place. So the issue of temporary incumbency does not arise here. Secondly, and very briefly, is on the issue of the separation of powers. You know, James Orengo is much more senior lawyers than I am, but he knows too well. I'm sure he knows too well that the doctrine of separation of powers, as enunciated by Montesquieu and repeated in many constitutions across the world, including ours, does not provide for absolute separation. The arms of government are interdependent, interconnected. They exercise that independence with mutual respect, and that's why you see the Chief Justice will be sworn by the executive, the executive head will be sworn by the judiciary, etc., etc.
Where is coming from? And that is not what Montesquieu talked about, the French, politician and statesman. In fact, he was beginning, if you look at what came out of the French Revolution, it turned organization of government on its head. If you look at our constitution, the first institution that the constitution deals with is parliament, and then the executive, and then the judiciary. So in the order of things,
that is absolutely true.
Parliament is a more superior body.
That is true.
I
hold the same view, actually.
And then secondly, we have a situation where Parliament can also overcome the decisions of the president. Not the opposite.
True.
Yeah. In
fact, I agree with you.
Fact,
that is Article
where
1.
Parliament is exercising its full powers, it is more often than not that Parliament would derogate the exercise of powers of the president, instead of the president derogating the powers of parliament.
Larry,
but you're coming.
Just a moment.
Let him finish his point. Let him finish his point, Prof. Then you'll answer.
Finish the point. The tragedy about its parliament that we have, it does not live to the constitution, because the constitution was promulgated to make sure that the old order where the executive control the politics of the nation came to an end. Now, these elected members of Jubilee, more often than not, they come to Parliament not as parliamentarians, but as agents of the executive. And that has demolished
I will not talk politics tonight,
power of
because
Parliament.
that is what Senior Orengo wants us to do. I want to talk law.
Haven't those two been so deeply intertwined right now that it's impossible to tell the difference?
Let's not depart from this point, because he has made certain points which must not go unchallenged.
Right.
Number one, the issue is not whether the parliament is a superior institution than the executive in law. In fact, if you read Article 1, Part 1 and 2, the hierarchy is there. In fact, it places the judiciary in an even more unfavorable condition. And the reason is simple, because the judiciary is not composed of elected representatives. And therefore, Article 1 says that sovereignty rests with the people. 1.1. 1.2 says the people may exercise this either themselves, through voting or through referendum or general election, or through their representatives. Then the executive comes second, because the head of the executive is elected also by people. So as much as not the entire executive is elected, the head of the executive is also elected by people. And then finally the judiciary, which actually at 1.3 exercises donated, delegated sovereignty. But the Supreme Court of Kenya is trying to torpedo. Just a moment.
In the Kenyan situation.
Senator,
yes.
You know, what the Supreme Court has tried to do is to torpedo and imagine that is superior to the people and their representatives. That is one point. The second, last, and very quick point is the issue, going back to Montesquieu again, was not on what Jubilee is doing and what NASA is doing. The issue was, are the three arms of government, in the context of the President's opening of Parliament yesterday, are the three arms of government related and interdependent? And the answer is yes. And they keep on checking and balancing each other.
Yeah, but
so you cannot tell us that Parliament is a separate entity.
You know, if the President wants that interrelationship to operate smoothly and in accordance with the Constitution, he has to come to the realization that he's wearing two hats. One
Precisely.
as head of government and one as a head of state.
Precisely.
Head of state.
Precisely.
When it comes to Parliament,
yes,
especially in the opening of Parliament,
correct,
he comes as the head of state.
Head of state.
And therefore, to be seen to be addressing one party, his party, and he's addressing. No, just a minute.
Let him finish.
He's addressing that party after holding a PG, a parliamentary group in State House of all the places, and in the same morning, these people are transited to the Houses of Parliament, and the same meeting of the same parliamentary group is presided over by the President. He ceases to have the stature of a head of state, and everything should have been done. And in a normal democracy, everything. No, just listen to me.
Boycotting.
No, just listen to me.
Just
listen to me.
NASA
I'm just about to finish.
Let him finish. Let him finish.
I'm just about to finish.
I know Senior doesn't finish.
No, I'm just about to finish.
But I'll give it to you.
I'm just about to finish. He should have done everything possible to reach out, to make sure that the state opening of Parliament is a matter that brings dignity to the Republic. In fact, with a president like Moi, however much people may criticize him, or even Kibaki when the multi-party came in its full force in the year 2002 and in 2007, when there were divisions, he made sure that when he was coming to a state opening of Parliament, and whatever noises that came thereafter during the proceedings, but he was presiding over a state function, not a PG of his own party. And therefore, I think the President must learn that he's wearing two hats. And a lot of times when he's talking,
he knows that too
he
well.
is forgetting about the more important hat that he's wearing, and that one is
he knows that too well.
state.
The reason that our friends gave yesterday had nothing to do with where the PG was held. The argument, which now my learned friend has abandoned the last 5 minutes, the argument was that Uhuru Kenyatta is exercising temporary incumbency and therefore is a president-elect and those kind of stories, which is false. It's not true. He is president of the Republic. Why? Because the Supreme Court has voided the election of 8th of August.
No, your standard of the law is very limited. The issue of temporary incumbency is between the general election,
which was
on the 8th.
The
general election was on the 8th, and whatever time there's a finality to the presidential election. Because even after this, even on the 17th, if the elections are held on the 17th, somebody can still file an election petition. So the position of the president will remain that of a temporary incumbency until that matter
You
is
practice
resolved.
law much longer than me.
So
but I've also,
are you saying therefore that his argument is that he...
Just a minute, Larry.
Let me ask the question as you respond, because
you
temporary incumbency is where I want to go, Prof.
He will get away
Would
with
it be temporary incumbency until such a time when a new president is sworn in or he's sworn in again?
Precisely. Like now.
Let me answer
this question. I want to answer this question.
Senator Orengo. Senator Orengo, let the
I know the
finish
tricks
first.
he uses. He has practiced law much longer than I have, but I also took a lot of time to study comparative constitutional law.
So you should do more listening.
From around the world. Your argument, Senior, is that temporary incumbency is from the date of an election to when another president is sworn in, which is true, Article 134. Our argument, and that is what we believe, is that the voiding of an election in law means it's as if that election never happened. And that's why we're having a fresh election. It's not a rerun. So the issue of temporary incumbency does not apply here because according to the Supreme Court,
You
there
have- you
was
have
no
not- you-
election.
you have
That
not-
election has been voided.
You have not looked at that article very well. It specifies that the period of temporary incumbency is between the date of the general election. And if there's an election petition and there's an invalidation of the election, that status of temporary incumbency exists until there is a final election and the president-elect assumes the office properly.
That's
That is
true.
what is contained
No,
in
that is not
Article
true. I don't want
134.
to push it further,
Yeah.
but that is not the position.
Yeah.
All right, I want to respond to something that you're referring to the location of State House, where statements were made. This was President Kenyatta speaking at State House regarding what would happen if Raila Odinga were elected president. Watch.
IEBC, we expect them, as is provided for in the Constitution, to run the elections independently of what the parties want. However, we are ready to engage with them on the items that they feel are necessary for us to share information and ensure that we have a peaceful, credible, and transparent election.
Hata akichaguliwa, we have the opportunity in parliament within 2 months, 3 months. Tumemtoa.
Senator Orengo, what's your reaction to that?
My reaction is that he was completely out of order, because if you had read the judgments of the courts, including the High Court and the Court of Appeal, even in matters of impeachment, you must have grounds that are provided under the Constitution. You cannot just wake up one day and say, I want to impeach so and so, and because I have the numbers in Parliament. The basis and grounds of that impeachment must be those grounds that are provided for under the Constitution. So he was completely out of order, and in fact, you have seen the courts, even in a situation where we as a Senate had impeached the governor of Embu. Yeah, the court said, we didn't do it right. And what the president is saying is not advised by some of these decisions that have been made in the
Senator Kithure, is it the Jubilee position that if Raila Odinga is elected, they will impeach him? You will impeach him?
The president's comments were in the context of legitimacy of a president and how that legitimacy is connected through the institutions of the executive and the legislature. In simple terms, there is a connection between the president, who is popularly elected, and the legislature. And that is why the legislature can remove the president through numbers. So he was saying, how come Jubilee has all these superior numbers at all elective posts from down to top, and then this presidency would want, of course, we do not believe that Uhuru lost the election. So the question was, how do you survive without the legitimacy of your party through parliament? And that relationship is there. That's why parliament is able to remove
in
the head of state.
civilized democracies like in the United States of America, the last years of Obama, he didn't have a majority in both houses of Congress, Senate,
but you have
and
also
the House
seen,
of Representatives.
but you have also seen,
they never talked about impeachment because there were no grounds upon which even the American public would accept an impeachment. But right now, when Donald Trump is controlling both houses, you're beginning to hear the word impeachment from both sides of the house.
Even though he's got majority in
although
both
he has
houses.
majority.
but you also
That's how
know
people behave
in Scandinavia,
in democracies.
in Scandinavia, which I think are also democratic states,
Yeah.
many countries are run by very short-term governments.
But those are parliamentary systems.
If
Those
you are in a,
parliamentary systems.
it doesn't matter. The
No,
consequence is the
those are
same because the
parliamentary
executive,
systems. We had a
the prime
parliamentary
minister,
systems
the
where-
prime minister is executive.
Let me tell you, Kindiki,
Yeah?
me as Orengo have brought a motion of no confidence in President Moi, and you should have seen what happened in the House of that day. The whole military was there.
Yes.
Because the consequence was, if that motion had gone through, it would have been the end of the Moi presidency.
Yes.
I didn't need to satisfy any constitutional or legal grounds. So long as I put up a case, however weak it is, and I had the numbers,
Anyway, my point
it
is,
would carry the day.
the president
But
who is
under
popularly
a
elected
constitutional,
must have
constitutional democracy
a credible
like the
majority.
one we have,
Otherwise, there will be a contradiction when you have a president in office with a minority in the legislature, he can't even push through his agenda.
But that
that's how it should work.
Yeah,
that's how it should work.
It
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, the country will come to a
But Senator, that was not the president's point. I listened to his entire speech, and he
But I know
said,
the context. You listen to the bite.
No, you're imagining
the edited bite from
No, I listened to the entire speech.
Context.
I listened to the entire speech, and he said, how would Raila govern without a majority? Even if he's elected, he would be...
He's briefed by, so many people. So I know the context.
No, it's well understood.
You don't know the context. I know the context.
I think you should advise the president that he is the head of state. It's becoming. No, he doesn't know. Sometimes when I listen to him,
he does.
I think he forgets.
He does.
When he's in a frenzy, in a public, he forgets that he's head of state. For example, calling the Chief Justice and the judges of the Supreme Court wakoras. I mean, that was absolutely out of order. And that is part of the pattern in which the context of Raila's case comes in, where he says, when we have a majority, we can kick Raila out.
Is there any person who has been insulted more than President Uhuru Kenyatta?
Not at all.
So you cannot purport.
They insult Raila more than anybody else. Every day. Yeah. But he's used to it.
Who has been called all names.
Yes.
And that's part of democracy. That's what he says.
No, you call him a name and you end up in court like Modama.
You make a decision.
You call him a name.
You must allow to be criticized.
Are you both making the point that two wrongs make a right? Just because President Kenyatta was called this, Raila deserves to be the same, or the reverse?
Let me tell you, if you listen to Raila's speeches on President Uhuru, they are normally very civil, very courteous, except some references to Deputy President Ruto, who, because of his bad manners sometimes, you cannot help.
Now, that's part of the bad manners. And by the way, Larry, that's not what brought me here.
No.
I don't want to go that route.
I think it's a legitimate one. Let him make his point.
I'm making a very good point.
I'm
making a very good point. No. Even in the House of Parliament, if you're not of good behavior, you're thrown out. So I'm saying, in justified circumstances where somebody like Deputy President Ruto, the way he refers to Raila Amolo Odinga, is not a way in which somebody who can act as president, if that office for a certain reason is vacated or in an acting capacity, you should never be using that type of language. And by the way, even President Moi in his time, he never called Kibaki or Jaramogi Oginga Odinga in those kind of terms. But we have reached a level where political rhetoric and language
on both sides
belongs
on both sides
belongs to the cesspool
on both sides.
And by the way, in my long years in politics, and we have had very rigorous debates in Parliament, the type of language that you're even finding in the floor of the House is completely outrageous.
Look at who is
because
talking.
Of the use
James
of
Orengo,
the majority in
James
the House.
Orengo comes from NASA. This is the NASA of Millie Odhiambo and company. This is the NASA of Gladys Wanga. This is, I don't know who he's talking to, Kenyans or he's talking to people from outer space.
In all fairness, Senator Orengo, within the NASA stages, there have been some very unsavory names used on the president.
On the president,
directly. Sometimes in your presence.
Even today.
Let me tell you.
Even today.
Let me tell you, if you listen to what somebody like Millie Odhiambo says, and I want you to be very careful about Millie Odhiambo. That lady has been a state counsel for a very long time. Before you became a lawyer,
she's 3 years.
Millie Odhiambo,
She's 3 years, my
Millie Odhiambo was doing cases on behalf of the Attorney General.
She's 3 years, my senior.
Yeah, she's still your senior.
Yes.
Yeah. So
no problem with that, but she's making mistakes.
So I would ask you.
Being a senior doesn't entitle her to make mistakes.
I would ask you,
because he's trying to intimidate me here with seniority.
Listen to her.
Seniority is not for purposes of intimidation.
No.
It's for purposes of professional conduct of issues.
And I can't use it. I cannot use it.
Doesn't matter who graduated when.
I cannot use it for
I'm
that
very
purpose.
senior to so many people. I don't use it against them.
I cannot use it for that
so
purpose.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me that I don't know who graduated before the other.
Professor Kindiki, the question of Millie Odhiambo being your senior, you're the one who brought it. I didn't bring it. You said she was, ahead of you by 3 years. I didn't know that. So it's a question that you.
I was countermanding the many years.
Prof, we were talking.
She started representing people many years. It's as if she was a classmate of Vasco da Gama.
Prof. In terms of, you're talking about equal opportunity insults in a way, because you're saying that the level of discourse has dropped on both sides. He's called it, has gone to the cesspool. Would that be the same place where you categorize President Kenyatta today calling Raila Odinga Yule Mganga?
You see, we don't stand for insults. You've seen one of our MPs was arraigned in court because
Mudama was arrested. Mudama had to be arrested.
Of words that he spoke were insultive, and Jubilee has not come out to defend him. NASA was
they have
all
not
over
distanced themselves
CID.
from it either.
No, they have. The president made it very clear, even yesterday during the PG. That's why I was saying.
In all fairness, Raila Odinga has not condemned the dangerous speech coming from those on his side.
The president was very clear in the PG yesterday, and he said, "You do hate speech, you're on your own."
All our people who have been cited for hate speech have been taken to court. And all those cases have been dismissed.
But Raila was at CID headquarters
even before. But he was there. He was there. If you look at what Mudama is charged with,
I don't know what he's charged with.
No. I mean, it's ludicrous. You would not take somebody.
I don't know what he's charged with, but the point is that insults will not help this country. That's my point. And personally, I don't insult anyone.
And I don't either.
Okay, let's leave it there just for the moment. We have plenty more to discuss after the break on Sidebar with Senators Kithure Kindiki and James Orengo. In the last hour, we spoke to Ezra Chiloba, the CEO of the IEBC, and asked him directly his response to that.
Well, we haven't received it formally. We also read it in the media, like everyone else. We've been busy also putting in place the plan and undertaking processes that will lead us to get ready for the election. If those demands is what we've seen in the media, of course, they're coming in tomorrow, and the Commission, I believe, will ably explain to them what is possible and what's not possible. At the end of the day, Larry, if you ask me, as a country must always reflect. Do we live for the moment, or we live for the future too? And in this case, the moment such as that is so tense, but that moment must be informed about what is likely going to happen in the future. So my take is that if we have all this understanding across the different stakeholders, I think will help the country to be able to move forward.
Senator Orengo, Ezra Chiloba seems to say that NASA is not helping the country move forward.
He is the one who is not helping the country move forward. You know, we started bringing out the mess in the Commission last year. We had several cases which the courts agreed with us, from the question of printing of ballot papers, the question of how you count the votes, you tally the votes, how you transmit the votes in the Maina Kiai case. And all through, the Commission took the opposite view. So we saw this coming. And the greatest impediment to free and fair elections within the Commission is this gentleman called Chiloba. In fact, I think it is a failure of our criminal justice system, particularly in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, that Chiloba is still serving in that commission.
He says
with the evidence that we have, which part of it is was taken before the Supreme Court, and part of it we are going to make it available to the Director of Public Prosecutions. It is a shame, and contrary to the provisions of the Constitution that deals with the leadership and integrity, that such an officer should be serving in an important commission.
He says that the election is a much more complex process than just one person. No, it's run by a lot of people, and it is not right to point one person.
The election, if the elections are run properly, it is the easiest thing to take place in any country. I remember when I first took part in parliamentary elections, there used to be one officer called a supervisor of elections. He used to sit in one office he didn't even have a secretary. He was able to run elections in the entire Republic of Kenya, although at that time we didn't have presidential elections. The good thing about President Kenyatta, the older President Kenyatta, is that he had a few interests. Like, for example, he would not allow Koinange to be beaten in Kiambaa. But when Njoroge Mungai was beaten in the Dagoretti constituency and went to complain him to try and change the results of those elections, He said, my boy, you've said you wanted to be president. If you can't win against Mudhora in Kiambu, in Dagoretti, then you're not even fit to be a member of parliament. I think we are making elections too complicated. It is a one-day affair. If there's adequate preparation, I should not see the difficulties that we are encountering in our elections.
He says Ezra Chiloba is the single greatest impediment to a free and fair election. Do you agree?
I have a couple of things in connection with all the things he has said, but I'll say them very briefly. Number one, it's not fair to isolate one public servant unnecessarily, especially unless there are absolute issues. For example, for us, when we talk about Supreme Court, we are talking about an absolute determination that has already been done. Now, in terms of Ezra Chiloba, the court has not even given us a ruling, a judgment, unless Senior is telling us he is writing the judgment or he knows people are writing, because we have not seen the writing, the judgment, the detailed judgment. Number two is that you cannot ask the DPP to act without that judgment coming and giving him information, plus the evidence that you are saying you have, which by now, if you are saying he should have left, by now also that evidence of yours should be with DPP. But you are telling us here, you will take it there, you haven't done it. Number three is that you cannot say all the things that were allegedly said to have been done in the election were done by one person, you know, unless he was a ghost, because it's not Ezra Chiloba who refused to sign, I don't know which form, who used what form, you know, and so forth and so forth.
Are you saying Ezra Chiloba was blameless in the challenges the election faced?
I have no idea. Yeah. And you know, because I can see where James Orengo is driving me, and I don't want to go there. For us in Jubilee, we don't want to enter into this debate of discussing individuals and which clerk there, which person did what. We are looking at a commission and we are saying that let the commission do the election. And in terms of criminal behavior, criminal conduct is individual. So unless you are saying you've seen that evidence, because I don't know where this evidence is from, the court has not given its judgment, we are about astounded that one person can be the subject of mob justice. And then finally, and with deep respect again to all our institutions, because again I don't want to fall into the trap of cannibalizing institutions, which NASA is doing. They gave IEBC 32 cases within 3 months, and right now they are even bringing others. But I want to say that the returning officer of the presidential election is not Ezra Chiloba. He's the chairman of the commission. So if it was in terms of responsibility, that's where responsibility must start.
Just as a rejoinder, the Constitution says the running of the commission. The commission acts in plenary, but when it comes to carrying out, implementing the functions of the commission, that by dint of the Constitution is a function that falls in the chief executive of the commission. And it is not left to ordinary legislation. It's there in the Constitution. Secondly, you know, the chairman himself has written what is a notice to show cause, you know, a note to Chiloba, bringing out 12 issues specifically. As far as I'm concerned, Ezra Chiloba has not responded to those.
How do you know?
No, he has not responded.
They say that they have responded internally, and once the commission has reviewed them, they will make them public.
It's an internal memo, unless you are telling us you are privy to what goes internally, what goes on internally in the commission.
I can tell you he has not responded.
He says he has.
He has not responded. You know, he has been prodded by Ruto the other day, you know, in Citizen, that we are waiting the response of Chiloba, that even the DPP, I mean the Deputy President, has not seen that response. And therefore, we cannot take lightly the views of the chairman, where he has made accusations directly.
And for your information, remember,
I was not talking.
Those issues
are
the same issues that were in the petition.
I was not interjecting when you were giving your remarks. He has given 12 specific issues, some of which were not a matter which was before, you know, the Supreme Court, including the unauthorized access to the servers and to the ICT platform of the Commission through the unauthorized use of the password of the chairman.
By who?
By Ezra Chiloba and his agents, because the two people named were appointed by him You know, that is there in the memo. Two people, I think one is called Wamai and somebody else.
As Chiloba today told us, all of those issues have been resolved internally.
No, they have not been resolved internally. You know, now, you know, something that was, I remember, and that's why I carried this document here. You know, people normally forget. There's a case that we did some years ago. The applicant in this case was Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, and others. And the case was against Nicholas Biwott and the Electoral Commission. And in this case, the government of Kibaki had removed the name of Uhuru Kenyatta as chairman of KANU. Do you know who are the advocates for Uhuru Kenyatta in that, and Ruto in that case, which we won for Uhuru? Mutula Kilonzo, Firoz Norji, James Orengo, Otienda Molo, Kathy Kilonzo. Those are the advocates that stood firm with Uhuru Kenyatta when Kibaki was taking away his party. And at that time, he was leader of the opposition. You know, the names of a lot of lawyers who were representing him in this particular instance were appearing for the state at that time. So what I'm trying to say is this. Larry, me as a person, I would never want to entertain any injustice. I will always want to stand with the underdog. And in these circumstances, if I knew we did not have a proper case to put before the commission, before the Supreme Court, I would not have entertained it. And you remember when we filed that case, I said we have a bombshell. And my friend here and Murkomen rushed to judgment even before they read the petition and said there is nothing, it is underwhelming. In fact, the problem that Uhuru Kenyatta is having now is because of some of the utterances, because they underrated the case. It was indeed a bombshell, because if you look at the evidence,
the case is done by
if you look at the evidence in that court that has placed before that court, and we're going to pursue, the criminal enterprise that is taking place in IEBC can be brought to an end.
You know,
did you see the bombshell?
No, there was no bombshell.
Did you see a bombshell in the Supreme Court?
There was no bombshell, but I have a lot of respect for Senator Orengo and all the lawyers from both sides who were acting. That's a professional matter. And there's a difference between political rhetoric and professional issues in court. So the things that we say as politicians, when we wear that hat, may not necessarily.
As a lawyer.
Yeah, the bombshell, although you said it in a political context. No, but let me say this, Larry. The access to servers. I was in Bomas myself. After I won my seat in Tharaka Nithi, I came to Bomas of Kenya. And I was backing up the team, the presidential agents who were there from the second day. I saw it myself. All presidential agents of presidential candidates were given what the commission was calling a back end. ICT people understand what that means. Access to the server to track the coming in of Form 34Bs. I was there myself. All the presidential, including Professor Wainaina's agent, Dr. Ekuru Ekod's agent, Raila Odinga's agent, Uhuru Kenyatta's agent, and they were given access in a limited way the server. I was there myself.
No, you were not there. In fact, your name is not there as an agent.
You are the one who was not there.
I was there as an agent. I was there.
I'm not saying I was an agent. I'm saying I was there.
You are not an agent.
I was there.
I
was backing up our team.
You are a busybody there because
that is derogatory.
Only agents.
No,
it's true.
That route I will not take. How can you call me a busybody?
But I'm saying you're a busybody.
Leader of majority of Jubilee.
Because in a tallying center, only authorized agents are supposed to be allowed in a tallying center. You cannot just walk into a polling station or into a constituency tallying center.
Let me ask you.
And carry your office.
You see, and that's what I was avoiding.
And
I knew Orengo
let me tell you this. Let me tell you,
when
we were there, we asked the question when we were looking at the screens.
Yes.
Why are those figures coming without the transmission of the images of the forms? Because what they were transmitting
that's not the subject matter.
The
subject matter was on access.
Just listen to me. Yeah, because we asked the question.
You want me to be listening to you?
No, I'll listen to
and
you.
can't
You both have to listen to
me?
each other. Yes, I agree.
He's always interrupting me and telling me, listen to me.
Senator Orengo, please say your point so Prof can also say his point.
I'm not in your classroom.
But
we're in a debate, my friend. No, you're out of order. You're out of order.
Yeah, but
you are out of order.
You are the one who was talking about access to bombers, and I told you you're a busybody. You're a busybody at bombers. You didn't have the papers to enter bombers. You used your authority in Jubilee to enter, and you're the people who caused confusion. Me, when I went there, I had to produce my papers.
Who told you I didn't have papers?
Before I could be allowed in. And when we were sitting in the room with the agents, including Mr. Tuju, including the other agents and the lawyers, I didn't see you there. And we asked the question, why in those
You didn't see me at Bomas, okay?
No, you were not there. You came at the tail end when we were walking out, you and other persons who might.
Anyway, let's not go there. I don't want to. But his intention is to try and demean me.
What I'm saying is this.
But I don't. I will not go there.
And you know, I will never demean you. But
no, that's what you're doing.
I'm making a valid point.
No.
Can we move on, gentlemen, please?
Let's move on.
But I'm saying I've not finished the issue that I was raising about the transmission that was taking place. We did ask the question, why are the images of the Form 34As not being shown in the screen as required under Section 91C of the Elections Act? And they could not give an answer. They had to call a Frenchman from Saffron to give the answer. And he said the way the thing was configured, it can only transmit the images of text plus the image of the forms. But for some reason, they could transmit only the text, but they could not transmit only the image. And there is where the problem now started.
Prof, were you happy as Jubilee with how the IEBC conducted the election?
You see, the Supreme Court has given its ruling, summary ruling. We are waiting for the details to find out what happened where. Our case as Jubilee, as you realize, is very simple. Our argument is that we believe people voted, and those votes are somewhere, because the law requires that they be kept for not less than 6 months. The easiest thing would have been for the court to say, look, this transmission business is murky, let's go and count the votes.
So you're saying...
Our argument is, because we don't want to do the work of IEBC, the work of Supreme Court, we do politics. And I made that clear very early. As we do politics, you campaign, people vote. Now, how institutions work around that is a different question altogether. And because it is the Supreme Court that has said that there were irregularities and illegalities, let the judgment come out. We soberly look at it as Kenyans, identify where the problems are, reform our institutions, and move on as our country.
So you would have preferred as Jubilee that the Supreme Court order a recount, a physical recount of the ballot boxes, because they still exist?
Let me tell you.
That would be the most reasonable outcome, if you ask.
If you read a lot of judgments in election petitions, and I've done many in my life, the judges always say that the scrutiny necessarily requires or entails a recount of the votes. We asked for a scrutiny. We made an application for scrutiny. And to our surprise, and we were very happy with Advocate Paul Mwite, because he said, we have nothing to hide. When Mr. Ngate for the president stood up, he said, no, we don't agree with Mr. Mwite, I have to go to take instructions. And he came back with instructions saying, we oppose scrutiny. And then the other lawyers from the IEBC also came and said, they have shifted their position, they don't want a scrutiny. Now, that would have been a very easy thing for us.
So NASA would have been okay with a recount, a physical recount of the ballots?
That's what we were asking for. We were quite ready. If the ballot boxes could have been brought and counted, we wanted entry into the servers to see the transaction that took place, but they opposed it. So I hear the president talking about we should have counted the ballots. Now, his lawyers in court opposed that application.
If that argument holds true for NASA,
just a hindsight.
Similarly,
yes, Prof.
Because that's now water under the bridge, okay? Similarly, the most practical and most democratic thing for the country to do now is to return back and vote. again, our position, and when you see the president talking, he has been advised, as I said, by very many people. Our position is that the expression of the will of the people of Kenya is not contained in a form or in a computer or in transmission. It is contained in the piece of paper called a ballot paper and the expression, the mark that that person does there. And for us, the most important thing is the voting. Now, we can talk about how we can make sure that that decision has been conveyed to Nairobi in the form in which it was. Here we are again, because we are back on the drawing board. We are talking about transmission and computers and which program will be used to relay the results. And I know NASA knows what they are doing because they are not ready for election. You have seen the other partners of NASA, the same civil society suspects, the same people that engaged Jubilee for years at the ICC. They are back on the streets again, parading the NASA narrative, which is about computers and forms. The expression of the will of the people of Kenya is in the ballot. We must find a way. We must find a way of ascertaining that sovereign will. One last point, which is the Supreme Court, no, the Court of Appeal, in the many cases that were brought by NASA, in the minor Kiai case actually, said that the votes that are cast and declared at a polling station and tallied at the constituency are final. So this idea about transmission is a secondary issue. So if we can be able to say, okay, fine, how do we ensure on 17th of October that what is declared at the polling station and tallied and declared at the constituency is the same result that is announced in Nairobi? The whole issue of computers will fall by the wayside. Right. Finally to say that in all these circus, not a single agent, not a single person has sworn an affidavit to say the results of constituency X, polling center Y, which were announced and declared here, are at variance with what was declared in Nairobi. We are talking about servers, computers, ballot, watermark, security mark, serial number, etc.
Let me tell you, we have got many affidavits, including from Tharaka Nithi, where people came up. In fact, they gave us their primary copies of the Form 34A and said, what we are seeing as being announced as a result from this station in Tharaka Nithi is not the result as announced by the presiding officer at the polling station. That evidence is before the Supreme Court. A lot of it, Form 34As, where what was being relayed by the commission was at variance with what was announced at the polling stations. Now, I am surprised about the position that my learned friend has taken, because in the minor Kiai case, we supported it because the minor Kiai case says that, counting at the polling station in terms of the count of votes should be final and is unalterable.
He says all these civil society organizations hold a brief for NASA.
No. Let me tell you. And he's agreeing with the law in a case which was brought by the civil society. Then the Court of Appeal said the tallying and verification of the votes as announced and declared at the polling stations should be verified and tallied at the constituency. And therefore, the presidential elections are held at the constituency. That we are totally in agreement with. In fact, we were saying that the returning officer, who is Mr. Chebukati, announced the results of the elections before he had received all the forms of the results that were declared at the constituencies. In fact, our case finally, because we had very little time, was based more on the results as announced and as declared at the constituency. Now, I want to say this. My learned friend is putting this issue very simplistically. President Moi at one time said, we should not worry about ballot papers. Why don't people just go under a tree in a primary school and do open democracy? People stand up in a line and count the votes. Now, the problem with that type of election is that you cannot have a return of the elections. If somebody is questioning that election, you cannot collect those people
And verify.
And verify. The Constitution says that, and the Constitution is a direction by the people. It is the sovereign, the sovereign is the people. They have said, in order to conduct an election in the Republic of Kenya, you must conduct it in a fashion that is accountable, verifiable, accurate, and credible. And you can only do that if the footprints of that elections, even after the elections, can be interrogated. Now, what my learned friend here is saying is taking us to the Kivuitu situation, where in 2007, Kivuitu himself was complaining at KICC that results from Tharaka Nithi at that time were being cooked because the process of transmission was such that the returning officers had physically to carry those forms. And between a particular polling station in Tharaka Nithi and Nairobi, those forms were being changed.
All right.
So you needed a system whereby before those results arrive at the National Tallying Center, they would have been advised through an electronic transmission of what the results were. So you could be able then to verify.
Prof, before you jump in,
Yeah.
Senator Orengo, what does removing Ezra Chiloba achieve? Will his removal solve all the challenges the IEBC had with the last election?
You know, it will remove about 80% of the problems that we have in the commission. Because Chiloba has a particular mission. And that particular mission is based on what he's been instructed by his principals on how to conduct these elections.
Which principles?
Those principles, he knows them. And I can tell you it is with the powers that be. And, you know, we started engaging Mr. Chiloba before this commission was put in place. And we gave him a lot of space. We thought this is somebody new taking over from Mr. Oswago. Things are going to be a little bit better. But I can tell you, even this commission, the individual commissioners, they are not in a position to make a decision that is going to result in free and fair elections unless the secretariat, which is being run by Mr. Chiloba, is doing it in accordance with the law. And Mr. Musando, by the way, you know, his death, and I got to say this in national television, and from what, you know, he came from my constituency, and from what the mother was saying, there must be a degree of accountability. But this is a Kenyan who stood for free and fair elections. He wanted the systems to have integrity, and for that he lost his life. And Mr. Chiloba, as the principal executive officer of the commission, should be beyond suspicion and be seen to be acting
All right.
for the fulfillment of the constitutional provisions in regards to elections.
Prof, your reaction?
Thank you. You know, what my learned friend is involved in is consistent with the NASA philosophy. You fight institutions, you cannibalize institutions, especially right now the IEBC, because NASA is not ready, is not prepared for an election, which according to all estimates, including theirs, they cannot win. That's why they are talking about dates and about individual people. And by the way, so that we don't also look very meek, you know, I can pretend a lot to be a gentleman here, and he does all his politics, me, I go home empty-handed. Mr. Chebukati was a candidate of ODM in parliamentary elections in 2007 in Kitale. Jubilee never objected to him being chairman of IEBC. So this holier-than-thou attitude by NASA and doublespeak must be confronted head-on. We are saying institutions are run by human beings who can also make mistakes. Of course, those mistakes should not be fatal to democracy. There are ways of ensuring institutions are encouraged to perfect their business. But we cannot be involved in cannibalizing institutions which have been put actually at the instigation of the same people. They said remove Isaac Hassan and his commissioners, we bet backwards. Again being gentlemen as Jubilee. We said, okay, remove them. Yet Kriegler told us 2 years to an election, you don't change commissioners. Barely less than a year, the same people, including the chairman, who was an aspirant, a political, leave alone the alleged, association of Chiloba or any other person with other people. He ran on elections on ODM party. We said, fine, he's a Kenyan. Yeah, the fact that he ran for election doesn't mean he can't do his job well. So we cannot sit here as Jubilee and entertain NASA misleading Kenyans, and we are saying nothing about it. And for your information, this time now round, we are not backing off. The other time we backed off, we backed off, we changed the commission. The same circus is now being repeated. The idea, cannibalize this commission, there is no election, create a constitutional crisis. So that is not good for
So it's your submission that NASA does not want this election?
They just want to... and they are not ready.
Let me tell you.
That's why you are seeing suits to remove commissioners, suit to remove Chiloba. We have refused the date. You are a player. You cannot set the election date.
No, let me tell you.
You cannot. You can make a suggestion, but you cannot declare that there is no election.
Senator Orengo, does NASA want this election, this fresh election?
We want the election. And in fact, when there was an attempt last year to change the election date, we resisted it completely. And we want this election. We don't want Jubilee in power any day more than what is provided in the Constitution. They have 60 days to hold these elections from the time the Supreme Court rendered its decisions. But what we are saying is that not every election that is held is free and fair. For example, if you have an election where there's a 10% turnout in a general election, that would not be a free or fair election. That will not be a popular election. And what Jubilee is trying to do is to hurry up everybody. We forget about the problems within the IEBC and hold elections at their terms. And we're saying that we are not going to do. And coming to the point of Mr. Chebukati, Mr. Chebukati, they cannot disown him. He was a common appointee, popular, within the committee. In fact, that committee does not sit even in the Senate. It sits with the National Assembly. And the person who proposed the names before the National Assembly was Mr. Duale. I didn't hear any of the Jubilee members calling into question the suitability of Mr. Chebukati. So they cannot begin to attack him. And if that was the case, then we should look at every commissioner and begin to ask what their political standing is. And we didn't ask that question. And as to the removal of commissioners, nobody forced Jubilee that the commissioners should go. It was a joint and bipartisan process. In fact, the motion that ended up removing the previous commission, you will not find my hand at it. It is signed by him. It is signed by Duale. It is signed by Wetangula.
After demonstrations,
it's signed by Jacoyo Mediu. Yeah, so he cannot blow hot and cold. He is the one who put his hand that this commission must go. And that is in the historical annals. So laughter cannot take that point away.
We backed off when the Kenyans were dying every day at the altar of politics.
So you signed
this time round
on to let the Isaac Hassan team go.
We will not entertain blackmail, intimidation, or the pretense. This is the only country where I've seen a minority trying to impose their will on the majority. Democracy entails the majority making their point.
Which majority?
The minority making their point.
You are calling a majority
and the majority
out of an election that was
look at the MPs, senators, governors, MCAs. We whitewashed you. We whitewashed you from the village to the town.
Even in Jubilee areas,
from Nairobi
they are questioning,
to Siaya.
They are questioning elections.
We have 41. We have elected officials in 41 out of 47 counties.
In fact, there are more petitions filed in Jubilee areas.
As a result of the Supreme Court
No, as a result, they have genuine complaints. Martha Karua is not filing a petition because Raila Odinga has a petition.
I wouldn't know.
And you look at the grounds of
I wouldn't know.
But everywhere.
Jubilee has a majority with the governors, with the senators, with the women reps, with MPs.
Yes.
So are you saying that is not real?
No, it's not real. It's not real. Like, there are a lot of counties I can give you.
So are you condemning the entire election?
We are condemning the entire...
Including yours?
But including yours, you won with 98% of the vote in CI.
Yes, let me tell you. Let me tell you. And that's not a laughable matter.
You know, it's my entitlement to laugh. No, I can laugh, I can cry, I can clap.
A general
it's
election,
up to me.
A general election is either good or bad.
Don't dictate to me
And,
what
and I can
do.
tell you, this election, the way it was conducted by IEBC, across the board, it was not a free and fair elections.
Is that across the board?
And historically, across the board.
Even your election?
Yeah, I'm saying even my election, the things that happened even in our areas in relation to transmission. For example, in Nyando, the results for presidential elections were never transmitted from Nyando. The candidates scored 0, all of them. And there are areas in Nyanza, which is Raila Odinga's strongholds, where you find that Uhuru, through this formula, ended up getting more votes than Raila Odinga. And we demonstrated that in the court, showing how they were using a theory and a theorem that they had used in such a way that even the random results were showing Uhuru winning, progressively in a linear progression from the time the transmission started up to even after the elections. It was a linear progression, which was showing that, generally everywhere, even in the strongholds of NASA, Uhuru was still scoring the highest marks in terms of the transmission.
Larry, we beat NASA on 8th of August. We'll beat them again on 17th of October. Secondly, my learned friend has admitted that he got elected through a flawed process in CIA. The honorable thing, being the Democrat that I know he is, and a stickler to justice and the rule of law, if he believes that process was flawed, he should resign in the defense of the Constitution. He should resign, because I don't believe any single vote was stolen in my favor or in the favor of Uhuru Kenyatta. So you cannot tell us the election was totally flawed, because he has supported the Karua petition, which is saying everyone should go home. Every MCA in Kenya, every senator and governor and whatever should go home. So he's saying, including Siaya, that's what has shocked me, there was a flaw, so then he should resign.
No, maybe what I'm putting across, there's a way of invalidating elections, which is in the law. And we're having 300 and plus petitions, which is contesting the manner in which the elections were held all over the Republic. In my case, for example, I do not have a petition against me.
So do I.
And let me tell you, the majority with which I won, even during the party nomination, speaks for itself. But I'm saying, looking at the general picture, in terms of the general elections which were held on the 8th of August, 2017, it was not a free and fair election if you look at it generally and you look at the global picture. Otherwise the complaints will not be coming from everywhere. People saying that, in this ward the elections were not proper, in this county the governor, the women rep. I mean, I've never seen results that are contested from everywhere and almost by everybody who lost the election.
You cannot use petitions as a yardstick of declaring elections null and void. The filing of petitions, unless those petitions have been determined and those numbers, all of them have been confirmed.
In the last election, most of the petitions failed.
Exactly.
They were not
precisely
successful.
So my brother there is overreaching the issue. Yeah. But the point we are making at the end of the day, and this is our belief as Jubilee, and he should not condemn us for what we believe. We are not condemning them for what they believe. We believe democracy is about people expressing their will. It's not about machines. It's not about all this English we are speaking here. It's not about, it's just about expressing. And we have said, our candidate has said, if I lose in credible way, I will accept defeat and go home.
Your candidate has also said if he loses, they will impeach Raila.
We have not heard that. That's a legal process. He said Parliament will impeach Raila, of course, on grounds. We know you can't just impeach people. There must be grounds. So the point Larry is raised that as we are ready for the repeat of an election, painfully so, because we had won the election, it was robbed from us in broad daylight. We accepted because the Constitution demands we respect the decisions of the judiciary. But at the end of the day, you cannot be president courtesy of the Supreme Court. You know, they called us the computer-generated leaders.
But you know, it was computer-generated.
And what they are trying to do now is to generate their leadership from courts.
Let me tell you, Larry, from where we sit, we think at the polling stations where the votes were cast and counted, there was a proper election. The problem started with the transmissions. And I can tell you that even from our own figures, because we had tallying centers, although they attacked our tallying centers, we had several. They managed to attack two and vandalize it. But the other tallying centers we had, operated fully. From our own tallying and from the results that we got from polling stations, Raila won the elections by more than 1.5 million votes.
There was one document.
And let me tell you, we are calling them computer generated because their numbers were not based on the votes cast at the polling stations. Their numbers depended on the transmissions, which were done, and some of those transmissions were not done from polling stations or done from the county tallying centers. They were done from unauthorized premises. We have identified some places in Nairobi where these figures were being cooked up and transmitted, and the other systems which the Electoral Commission was supposed to use were destabilized. In fact, if you look at the reports from the Registrar of the High Court and from the ICT experts that were appointed by the court, it is a sorry picture because it shows that the transmissions which were received at the national tallying centers were not sent from the polling stations. And the kits that were supposed to be used for transmissions, most of them were not used.
What is the basis for your claim that NASA won the election with over 1 million votes?
Yeah, based on the tallying.
The document that
we received from the polling stations.
The document that came from NASA, Senator Orengo.
And I can tell you, let me tell you this, and that's why we wanted scrutiny. We were saying, we have scrutiny, we open up the servers, we look at the transaction logs, and we can tell you that if that had been done, then we would have proven right. Now, one of the things which has happened, which proves us right, is that on 5 days after the elections, the password of the chairman was used to access the servers, and it registered more than 10,000 transactions.
Ezra Chiloba explained that today. He said it was simply clerical because it was the chief returning officer, so there was nothing untoward happening there.
Let me tell you, it was not clerical because the report we have before the Supreme Court has it, that transaction that took place, and the people who had that access, we have it. It's before the Supreme Court.
The document that NASA uses to claim that you won the election had in at least one county where the total number of voters was less than the number of votes that NASA claims Raila Odinga got in that county. I believe it was Siaya. So how can you use that document to claim that the NASA win?
No. Siaya, that document, if you look at it properly, it was not the one that we had used. Because in Siaya, I know the votes we got. And in every county, we did not register votes more than the number of registered voters and more than the people who turned out at polling stations.
You see, what my learned friend is involved in here, again, which is, is expected, consistent with the NASA philosophy. They are players, but they believe they must set the rules. They must, they are the IEBC, they tally, they transmit, they declare. I have not seen anywhere in the law where a party to an election can declare results. What prevents Jubilee from coming with some figures also from wherever Because you are telling us you had, I don't know how many places
But you
you
are
are
working in
telling.
cahoots with the
That's
IEBC.
okay. That's
You
fine.
didn't
That's
work-
fine. So
yeah.
those
You are
allegations
working in
which you are
cahoots.
saying are
Yeah.
before court. Let the court judgment come out, and then we can address that matter at that point. The point I'm making, Larry, is this: as a player, you cannot declare your own results. It's even illegal. Actually, it's a breach of law. Yeah, you can tally, but you can't declare your own results.
No, we did not.
And what James Orengo is doing now is trying to perpetuate a narrative of some fictitious figures, I don't know from where, and how they were robbed, I don't know how many million votes. The official declarant of results is the IEBC through the returning officer. And as Jubilee, we have said, we might even have had thought we got different figures, but we respect what the IEBC said. So we want to ask NASA just to accept the same court that said that the election of 8th was void, the same court that says hold the election by the same party. If the court wanted IEBC, if the court found that IEBC officials and systems were irredeemable, they would have said reform or something and change. But the same court says IEBC in 60 days repeat the election. And then finally, we have children doing exams, for heaven's sake. And within 60 days doesn't mean you do it on the 60th day. It means you look at many factors, including national interest. And then they tell us that the children will not die if they don't do exams. They can as well do those exams next year. I have never heard of a greater insensitivity than that one. So let's face it, on 17th of October, let the will of the people of Kenya be done. We will participate. We believe we will win. And let democracy thrive, because our candidate has said he's ready. If he wins, he'll accept. He will graciously accept. If he doesn't win, he'll also graciously accept.
Let me tell you,
we challenge the announcement, Raila Odinga to do the announcement, the same
that we made in a press statement of the results that had been garnered by Raila Amolo Odinga. It is Musalia Mudavadi who read that press statement, and he said, I am not making a declaration of the results. He knows where that power lies in the Constitution. But we are informing the public of the results that Raila Amolo Odinga garnered. And these results are a consequence of the tallying based on the figures that we've received from the polling stations and from some of the constituency tallying centers. Now, secondly, and more importantly, what he's trying to say about the elections as a whole, we are ready for those elections. And I can tell you, even right now, we are campaigning. We are campaigning because we expect an election to be held within the timelines as provided under the Constitution. But we are saying circumstances must be created that will ensure that we have free and fair elections. And I can tell you that Raila Amolo Odinga as candidate, NASA as a coalition, is ready for these elections. And we do not want Jubilee to have one more day in State House. And having said that, when it comes to these institutions, the Supreme Court, if you have read the case of Moses Wetangula versus Mskari Kombo in the Supreme Court, a position was taken that the Supreme Court cannot go beyond its powers as an election court if a criminal offense has been committed. And that's why we made the Election Offences Act as a standalone statute in something that we did as a bipartisan process. That if there's an offense that has been committed, it is not the election court which sits and determines and convicts that person. And this matter I argued before the commission on behalf of Moses Wetangula, because some people were seeking the removal of his name from the register of voters. And gladly, the commission has agreed with our contention. So that the election court, having pronounced itself that there were illegalities committed, and we are in a different dispensation. The old days, the Attorney General was required to sit in an election court mandatorily so that if it emerges that an election offense was committed, then he does not need to be informed because he has been sitting there in court. But now that the election court has found that there were illegalities, it is upon the Anti-Corruption Commission, is upon the Director of Public Prosecution. Even on their own motion, they don't have to wait until somebody makes a complaint. They should have taken up the matter. And I'm happy when I was walking in here, there was an announcement from the Director of Public Prosecutions that is going to deal with this matter, and I'm happy with that. And tomorrow we are going to see him to offer the evidence that we have. And it would be important that for now and in the future, we make elections a happy event. Elections can be a matter that can create, happiness in a republic. After the elections, people shake hands, and I've been saying this, I've said this in the Senate, that we should learn how to make speeches. If you're a candidate, if you lose, you're going to read this speech. If you win, you're going to read this speech. But after every election in Kenya, we are having this unnecessary strife because of the manner in which the elections are held. I don't think it's because we don't accept to lose or to win, but it's because the referee is not conducting the elections in accordance with the rules. And to that extent, therefore, we believe that it's because of the impunity that has existed before, and that the impunity is not punished. Chicken Gate, even up to now, the players, the big players in Chicken Gate, have not been punished. And therefore, this commission, just like the previous commission, they have every confidence and arrogance that nothing is going to happen. And therefore, we are praying to the right institutions of the law that since elections going by the past have been a source of strife and disputation, they should be taking this matter seriously so that they deal with the election misconduct and malpractice. And now we have given the office of the DPP more powers by putting the statute in relation to the Election Offences Act,
right,
a matter within his mandate, and they should do that.
Prof, is that how you also read the law?
The DPP, the EACC, and these other organs are independent. They don't get directions from any person or authority. So it's unfair, through innuendo, for my learned brother to keep trying to insinuate that perhaps the DPP or EACC is reluctant to act because of anything. In any case, when a public officer or agency does not do a public duty, there are remedies under the law which are open to NASA. Those people can be removed from office. There are even orders. In my days at the university, when we used to teach administrative law, there was an order called an order of mandamus. An order of mandamus is an order to compel a public agency or official to perform a public duty they have refused to perform. So the remedies are there. So, and you cannot say, oh, the president or Jubilee, because the authority of independent institutions is plain in our constitution. Having said that, our own position also is that the dangerous trend of cannibalizing institutions that is being spearheaded by our friends in NASA will put this country into a very bad crisis. We do not have perfect institutions. That we know. Many institutions need to be improved, to be perfected. But the solution is not to kill institutions and strangle them. That is bad for democracy. However painful we might feel, and we have already expressed our pain in some of the instances. So let me finish by saying that we are ready for the election. We wish NASA all the best in whatever they are doing, but they should not try to intimidate any section of Kenya.
What is your reaction to this? They've given a list of 9 demands. They're calling irreducible minimums that must be implemented before they go to the election.
Those are suggestions they are making. They cannot say they are irreducible minimums.
They don't want Al Ghurair to print the new ballot papers.
We don't deal with procurement. We said this before. We dispose of that matter.
They don't want Ezra Chiloba running the election.
We don't care who prints the election. It's not our mandate.
They want an international team of experts.
The procuring entity. So our point is this. They have their suggestions. Let's call them suggestions. We may have our suggestions. Let us take them to the referee. But we cannot say that unless you agree to a certain date, there will be no election.
They want 291 new returning officers, not the ones that ran the last elections.
Yeah, 290.
But you can make suggestions.
In a population of more 40 million people, that's a very small number. Let me tell you this. The record is there. You can look at a record of Paul Mwite, Raila Amolo Odinga, myself, fighting for institutions. We have fought for the judges' independence. Over the years, some of people were detained in order to protect judges and protect the courts. I have been a victim of courts which were not acting independently. So I am firmly behind protecting institutions. Parliament did not have independence. It's Orengo who came up with amendments to the Constitution to secure the independence of Parliament, because Parliament was just an extension of the executive. I mean, if you look on the other side of Jubilee, I mean, there hardly anybody who has stood for institutions when they were under attack. We have stood with...
Even Kiraito Murungi?
I mean, Kiraito Murungi...
No, I'm just asking.
No, I'm telling you, Kiraito Murungi is a very special person, and he is not in the common will of the Jubilee crowd.
In
fact, I can tell you, but the last time he didn't run as Jubilee.
He's the one who helped us even form Jubilee.
He had a bus.
He was the chairman of the formation of the Jubilee Party.
I can tell you, is a special, is the exception rather than the rule in Jubilee.
So many others.
Yeah, and I can tell you,
so many others.
We have fought for these institutions, including the way, the structure of IEBC as it is at the moment. We are the people who went to the streets to make sure that we have this kind of institutions. And therefore, we have to be vigilant when we see these institutions not acting in the manner in which they are required under the Constitution. We cannot just sit back.
You've given the IEBC an ultimatum. 9 different demands, no Al Ghurair to print the ballot papers, new returning officers, international experts of ICT.
Yeah, Al Ghurair, if you look at what they have done, and it is very bad on the part of Al Ghurair, they should have come up and said, these forms, election transmission forms that we printed, they were of a special character, and what appeared in court as the forms which were isolated by the Registrar of the High Court and detected to be forgeries and bearing alterations, that those were not their forms.
The IEBC says...
But they have kept quiet. They have kept quiet. You know, these forms, if you look at them, the proper forms, and you know, this question was put to my learned friend Paul Mwite by the Chief Justice, that, you know, what were these security features for? And why were they not in all the forms? And it was a valid question. And therefore, what we are saying, if you have an organization which has got integrity, they should have, you know, stood up and said, we can see in this election that forms which did not originate from Al Ghurair were used in the elections. But our suspicion is, and we got credible evidence now to confirm that that is the truth, that, you know, a latitude was given to certain persons to be able to publish those forms out here in Nairobi. In fact, we identified the place where, you know, there are unauthorized forms that were not printed by Al Ghurair. But the worst thing, let me tell you.
He wants to rebut that before we move on.
No, he will lose it, because I know James Orengo will go round.
Let him answer to that, and then, Senator, you continue. Yes, Prof.
The information we have, because he keeps on saying we have information, we also have information. We also have capacity of getting information. The information we have, and it's credible, is that some of the allegedly incorrect forms may have emanated from presiding officers and returning officers sympathetic to NASA who wanted to destroy the credibility of the election pursuant to the Samsonian doctrine of bringing the tempo down. When you see you're going to lose an election, the best thing is to spoil this thing, you muddy the water, and you make it all confusion. That is the information we have.
So you're saying that
that is the information we have. I just wanted to say that
the discrepancies in the election in this forms were planted by NASA.
In fact, most of them, the information we have, most of them came from NASA areas. At the coast.
No, that is not true.
Yeah, that is the information we have.
Is this a Jubilee talking point? Because he's not the first Jubilee legislator to come on the show and say that.
Let me tell you, what was scrutinized by the Register of the High Court at the Milimani courts were forms which were provided by IEBC. They were not forms provided by the NASA. There was an order for them to produce those forms, and they produced those forms. And that is what was scrutinized at Milimani. It was not forms from us. And in the scrutiny of those forms, it was found that those forms, some of them was just Excel sheets, you know, and things which were printed anyhowly. And what broke the camel's back is that these forms had a barcode, and they were asked, the IEBC, to provide a barcode reader. We also provided a barcode reader. And when those barcodes were used, you know, to scrutinize some of these forms, you'd find that instead of that barcode reading a polling station or a tallying center in a constituency, you'd find it is a restaurant somewhere in France or the World Health Organization institution somewhere in Paris. You know, it was a whole lot of a mess. And I want to disabuse the public of the fact that, you know, the evidence that really proved our case was not really from the documents that we ourselves produced. Once scrutiny was ordered, IEBC were told, bring all the 290 forms, and they brought it. And that was what was scrutinized.
From returning officers, the argument is actually completely opposite. I'm arguing, I didn't say NASA produced the forms.
I said they are from NASA's sympathizers who are returning officers.
Presiding officers who messed up the election.
The scrutiny that was being done at Milimani was being done with the agents. The court had ordered that we have two agents.
Yeah, that we know.
Yeah,
but we have said we have information. That is the information we have. But the same way you have your information.
The court directed that after that scrutiny, each party was required to make its own remarks, and the register was supposed to record those remarks. There is nowhere in those remarks where the agents for Jubilee said that these forms came from and somewhere.
We got that information later.
Other than from IEBC.
We got the information later.
Yeah. And which is hindsight, really.
All right.
And then when it comes to the Form 34As, the situation was even worse. And by the time we had done about 10,000, you know, the mark was terrible. I mean, nobody wanted to continue. We said we have enough, you know, to prove the case. And this is after Paul Mwite himself said, we are giving all those forms. Look at them. And the result was that, you know, it was a disaster that had happened.
Because we had nothing to hide.
In conclusion,
there was nothing to hide.
Senator, explain the language. NASA says there will be no election on October 17. It is not an election boycott, Musalia Mudavadi said today. What do you mean there will be no election on October 17?
What we mean is that there will be no election like the one which was held on the 8th of August. We are not going to allow that type of election to take place. The election that will take place at the time when the date is finally agreed within the constitutional timetable must be an election that is going to be carried out in terms of the Constitution. And you look at Article 81 of the Constitution, Article 86, and look at the Elections Act, it is very clear on how an election should be conducted. And that is why we are giving these irreducible minimums, that IEBC should show evidence that this election, in holding these elections, we are not going to have the same kind of catastrophe that we witnessed in regard to the elections on the 8th of...
Are they irreducible minimums, or is it an ultimatum to IEBC that without this, we're not in this election?
We mean what we say, that they're irreducible minimums.
He says they will not allow the election to go on like it did in 8th August. What do you make of that?
The election date is not set by parties. The 17th of October was not set by Jubilee. It was set by IEBC. In fact, we in Jubilee, if we were asked, we wanted the 10th of October. But the moment IEBC chose 17th.
10th of October is the Shujaa Day.
Precisely. Or thereabout. Or thereabout. Yeah. My Shujaa Day is 20th. 10th used to be Moi Day, which was abolished. But the point is that we wanted earlier than 17th, maybe by a week. But the moment the referee announced the 17th, we said we'll comply with it. Why should NASA be allowed to be the one to dictate to the rest of all of us? So we just back off and just imagine that when NASA says there is no election, there will be no election. The only people who can change that date is the IEBC, because they have already gazetted the date. But even now, because the rules of fair administrative justice demand, if that change is done by IEBC, we'll be demanding to know why. Because one party cannot bulldoze their way and their wishes as if they own the country alone. The country is for all of us. So our point, Larry, very briefly, is that we didn't set this date. It was set by IEBC. We had a different idea about when elections can be done. The rationale given by IEBC was convincing to us because it was about national examinations, which is a matter in the public domain. No, that's what IEBC said. They consulted with the Minister for Education. That's what IEBC said.
Why should they consult with the Minister of Education?
We don't know.
Not us.
We don't know.
See,
so the point is,
where the problem arises.
for us,
President Kenyatta asked, where is the law that Raila Odinga should be consulted?
No, it is in the Constitution, Article 10, consultations, public participation. In fact, there are a lot of cases.
He said he was not consulted, so why should Raila be consulted?
No, he was consulted.
We were not consulted.
No, he was consulted. Matiang'i wrote a letter. And on the basis of that letter, you know, consultations.
Where is the letter?
In law, consultation doesn't mean we talk to each other. Your consultation can be through communications.
This is the misinformation that must be corrected, Larry.
And
we wanted 10, and I know what I'm speaking about.
And let me tell you this.
And in spite of the fact my learned senior called me a busybody, I'm a ranking member of Jubilee, as we speak.
Who was demoted?
So I know...
You're demoted a little bit.
That's according to you.
Yeah.
That's according to you. I have not been demoted.
Because you're using the word ranking.
I'm a ranking member of Jubilee.
Yeah, but
and it has nothing to do with my position.
But demoted.
It's not my position.
Yeah.
Talk about NASA. Up to now, they have not even told us who is the leader of minority.
Yeah.
So you have so many problems, my friend. Stop pretending you can run Jubilee affairs. So the point is this. The point is this. You know, he wants to annoy me, which I would. I won't fall into that trap.
Go ahead.
So the point is this.
And I told you, you're going to fall in this trap.
I know.
When you are taking Kiraitu Murungi on, I told you, my friend,
about NASA.
You're going to get a whip on your back.
Okay, finish first. Just finish.
Yeah.
So the point was this. No.
Hang on, let Prof finish.
I wanted you to discuss Jubilee first and finish.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a ranking member of Jubilee.
Finish.
Okay.
Who was not demoted?
So demoted by who?
Yeah.
What is the where is the demotion? I can't see it.
You don't hold any official position. So your rank has fallen.
What do you know is in store for me?
I know that you are going to be deputy
Why
speaker.
Did we make the changes? You don't know.
Yeah.
I almost used the busybody thing, but I wouldn't because I'm a civil man. But Larry, NASA cannot intimidate the rest of us. We are also Kenyans. In fact, we are more. If it was about intimidation, we're even more. The president was not consulted by anybody. Okay?
No, yes.
The argument brought by IEBC about national examinations made logic to all Kenyans who have children or have relatives who have children or who mind about the future of tomorrow. To make matters worse, what even irked many people in this country, including in Ugenya, the home of my brother here, is the statement from their leader that children cannot die by not doing examinations. So you should not come here and cheat us and pretend, oh, this date was set by Jubilee, there was no reason given. The reason was given We complied with it. We are telling IEBC now that NASA is also making their suggestions. We are also our suggestion. We go by the date. If you change, you must tell us whether you are independent, but only takes instructions from one side.
You are trying to sensationalize what Raila Amolo Odinga said. By the way, you know, he is very conscious of the interest of children, and during the Kibaki government, when he was part of the team in the Kibaki government, they made it possible for people to have universal free primary education, which was welcomed worldwide. But having said that, you know, yesterday we went to IEBC headquarters on the basis of an invitation that had been sent to candidates with 3 of their agents or officials. And the Jubilee candidate did not turn up. And again, we made a demand that we wanted to know whether the Jubilee candidate will come in any future meetings. Because we think at the end of the day, in order to have free and fair elections, the candidates should be able to sit with each other and resolve some of these issues. They are the candidates. And now the letter which came from the commission, which is now inviting us to go there tomorrow with a view of a possibility of having a meeting on Friday between the 2 parties, is giving an option for the presidential candidates not to attend, or not to attend, knowing that you know, President Uhuru knows that his interests within the commission is well taken care of. He doesn't need to attend, despite these issues that are being raised. So, Larry, you must know that these institutions, when they begin to act without some mode of public participation and doing things without consultations.
The Deputy President was there yesterday.
He was there, but what time did he come?
He said that they had a parliamentary group meeting which ran a little over.
But the letter had been sent, you know, a day before. The time was given, and if they were not going to come, they should have, you know, rang the commission, because we asked the commission, are they coming? They didn't have an answer. That's how, if you really respect the commission, they should have written or sent some information that we are not coming, or if you're coming, change the time. And
so are you going for tomorrow's meeting?
And we sat there for 1 hour. No, we cannot go until we get some assurances, because, you know, IEBC is also fond of just sending letters, come tomorrow at 8, like they did the day before yesterday. And we were there yesterday at 11 exactly. And we spent 1.5 hours just waiting.
So NASA will not attend this Thursday meeting the IEBC has called?
Nobody was talking to us. No, they have called us for tomorrow, but we are not going there because the letter that is inviting us does not address some of the issues that we had raised. We want to agree on what to talk about. We don't want to go there and be lectured on what they're going to do. And to that extent, you know, Jubilee has also put certain positions. We have put certain positions. And we think if we sit together with the commission, we could be able to resolve some of these problems.
All right.
Yeah.
Daddy, you can hear from my learned brother's sentiments. It's either they want to be consulted or they want to hold in person to sit with their candidates. It's not clear. 3 things. 1, consultation is an optional thing. It's a right, but it's not a duty. There is no duty to be consulted. It's a right. So you cannot say, oh, the president did not come, oh, he sent his deputy. If he decides to send his deputy as an agent, it's up to him. It is his right to claim. It's not his duty. That's number 1. Number 2, President Uhuru Kenyatta is a very humble man. He even sits in kiosks to eat githeri. So Anniversary Towers is a much more polished place. So the idea of Uhuru not coming and this should, I think Kenyans should be educated that number 1, it is not a duty. It's a right that somebody can exercise if they want. Number 2 is that Uhuru Kenyatta, if there is need, if he feels there is need to go to IEBC, will always go there. But NASA should not keep on saying they can't attend a meeting unless Uhuru comes and that kind of thing. The only thing I agree with him.
Is that what NASA is saying? That you won't attend a meeting unless Uhuru is there?
That's my. I could be wrong. No, I could be wrong. That's my perception. But let me finish.
But now that you asked me the question,
I agree with them on one point. Yeah. Because we raised it ourselves. The IEBC purported to invite us separately. They invited NASA separately at 10. They invited Jubilee last week at 4 o'clock. And I was in that meeting. Although my brother here will believe as a busybody, but that is his opinion. What happened is that NASA expected IEBC to go in the offices at 10, while IEBC wanted us separately to go at the commission at Advisory Towers. So there was a breakdown of communication. Already, for us in Jubilee, we are opposed to IEBC coming to see parties in their offices and homestays. The referee can call players. Okay? So as we understood, if you are someone, you go to the Advisory Towers. The second point, Larry, is when we reached there, we refused to discuss anything with the IEBC. As a preliminary issue, we raised it and said, it was myself, Raphael Tuju, Aden Duale, and Churchill, and we said, it is unfair for IEBC to keep on calling parties separately. What is this they are discussing with NASA in Upper Hill alone and in the afternoon with Jubilee somewhere in Pangani? They should call all the players, of course notice should be given, and so forth and so forth. So Larry, I agree with the senior Orengo here that the meeting should be bipartisan. What I don't agree with is to demand that a particular person must show up somewhere because it is not a duty to appear, it is a right to exercise.
No, let me tell you, that came in the context in which IEBC had communicated to us. That is a meeting of the candidates. And the candidates can come with an agent. And we asked that question many times because, you know, there are many times we go and see them where we don't have to go there with our candidate. And I can tell you, whenever they invite us, and there was a time after, again, a lot of these problems had emerged, they invited us to Hilton. And we all went there. We found them there. Yeah, we didn't say because Jubilee is there, we are not going.
But we never started the meeting before you came.
But what we are saying is that IEBC cannot call us to a meeting without telling us what we're going to talk about and without agreeing what we are going to talk about. And if you're going to have a joint meeting, we need to even alert Jubilee that these are the issues we are raising.
Correct.
They also should alert us, which these are the issues that we are raising. But you go to a meeting and you're given a 20-page document and say, we are going to go through this document. You have 1 hour to discuss. We are saying that that cannot work. But the issue, and I'm not saying that, you know, if IEBC summons Uhuru to attend and he doesn't want to attend, you know, he cannot be forced to attend. That is not my issue. But the understanding that we made, the IEBC, the understanding that we had from IEBC was that this meeting was for the candidates, and the candidates can bring their agents. So even yesterday when we went to the commission, when we found that the other candidate was not there, then we said, okay, our candidate also should not be there. And we sat there. And then we were told, you've got to wait because the deputy president is on the way. And the time of his arrival, we are not being told, he's in another meeting. So we thought the meeting was not well prepared and well organized. But let me tell you this, Larry, you know, at the end of the day, we owe it to Kenyans. We cannot be in a country where after every election, you know, there's strife and argumentation and disputation. We should have an election that after every election, you know, people accept however bitter it is, if it is free and fair. I mean, Hillary Clinton the other day was saying, you know, she had to stay in bed reading a novel and having a glass of wine or something and walking in the woods as a therapy. But she knew that in that system generally, you know, elections are conducted free and fairly. And even when President Trump said there had been, you know, some rigging, parties from both sides said no. Even the Republicans said no. we don't agree with the president and the president-elect. So we should have a situation in this country when it comes to matters of election, everybody has confidence on the referee. And by the way, we're not going to get out of the woods until one day, even in a football match, unless people have confidence in a referee.
Okay.
You cannot have a good match.
I wish James Orengo was addressing their candidate and their party.
Why?
Because all the things he's saying about refusing to concede and agree that somebody other than you can win, all those stories actually would apply very, very perfectly in their context. So I wouldn't want to add much more than that.
Great. We have to leave it there.
Except twice you have rigged, and
You
twice...
see, we have had that narrative before.
Yeah.
But I'm
So
sure on 17th of October,
let the next one be a free
the 17th
and fair,
of October one
fair context.
will lead to this happiness, this bliss that Senator Orengo is talking about.
Okay.
Because they will be defeated once and for all. And then we can have other candidates
And,
also.
and
We
also-
can have other candidates even from their team, so that this country can have
defeated once for
happier
all.
elections.
Once for all. You know, this is the kind of language, you know, they're
No, I'm
using
saying-
against the judges,
No.
against other candidates. You should, power should not get into your head.
agree
It should
that
be civil.
you go to an election
It should be civil.
either to win or to lose.
Yes.
He mentioned something that I want to pick up on. If Raila Odinga loses the election, will NASA accept the outcome?
You know, Raila's lost an election in 1997. He contested for the presidency, and he conceded and worked on a program together with Mwai Kibaki. They sat together and said, you know, we got to find another way of dealing with this. And this is what ended up with a new outfit in the year 2002. Where he said, you know, for the good of the country, I'm supporting President Kibaki. So he has shown that in the right circumstances, if, you know, there's a fair game, he is going to accept the results.
Including in this election, this fresh
but
election.
I can tell you in 2007, you know, it was a mess, and the whole world was here to see that mess. In 2013, it was a mess, and we said, okay, let Kenya have peace. But in this year, even when the observers were trying to create a narrative that, you know, the elections were free and fair, and we had that confrontation with John Kerry, we told him in his face. And now the international community, you know, has taken the opposite position.
Okay.
And international media, including the New York Times, what they're saying about these elections is something that we should take into consideration.
Okay. Does that satisfy you, the answer?
It doesn't. It cannot.
Why not?
For obvious reasons. That is NASA, this is Jubilee. Their position is well known.
He says that
What
Raila
he's
Odinga has
claiming-
conceded before in
what he's
97, and if he
claiming-
loses in
what
the right
is-
circumstances,
no,
he
if
will
that is
concede
the case,
defeat.
Uhuru Kenyatta conceded in 2002.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to start this all over again.
Yes, that's why I said we will not get anywhere with this.
It is
But I'm
2
sure the
minutes.
people of this
That
country
one-
are watching, they are listening.
That one.
They know us, they know what we stand for. So let's just go through the election and wish this country well.
Excellent.
Yeah, wish this country well.
Senators
Beyond the elections.
James Orengo and Kithure Kindiki, thank you so much for being with us tonight. 2 minutes after midnight, we've hit a new record. I think we just kept going.
The only thing I've been asking him
is
that he's a good lawyer, as well read. I want him to practice law more often.
I'll create time now that you say I've been demoted.
I'll
I'll create time to practice.
I'll meet in the courts.
No, I'm not.
Because sometimes, you know, even more common have this habit of commenting about cases they know nothing about.
Yes.
Like this one.
Yes.
You know,
No, you've made your point.
Yeah. So
And if you want me in court more, I'll be there now that I've been demoted according to the NASA doctrine. Thank you.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching Sidebar. My team has been amazing. They've worked really hard on the 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. shows. We're back next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. right here on NTV. My name is Larry Mido. Good night. Or is it good morning now? It's after midnight.
Good morning.